Whatever you want. Policy books, I don't see.
Yes, but the rules of the rules of the court go on. But the rules of the court don't say. So
Fine.
unfortunately, sorry about that.
That's okay. Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't see anything in there about waiving bills that amend bylaws either, or governing documents.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I didn't see that. Oh. Exactly.
No, I forgot to send you that presentation, Sean. I'll do that now.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to call the 18th meeting to order. We'll start with roll. Senator Christopher. Senator here. Okay. Senator Henry. Okay, perfect. Senator Hayashi.
Here by proxy.
Senator Fine.
Here.
Senator Rodriguez. Senator Jenkins. Senator Newlander. Senator Max Robbins. Senator Ward.
Here.
Senator Abiscara. Senator Perez. Senator Sullivan. Senator Soni.
Here.
Senator Stilwell.
Here.
Senator Mora. Senator Butler. Senator Menashe. And Senator Jacob Roberts.
Present.
All right, quorum is met. Now moving to the adoption of the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda? Bobby?
So 2 points. First of all, I would like a second N in my name. And then also, we can't do anything about it at this meeting, but these policy books have been sitting in committee for a couple weeks, so I would like it if they came through, please, if you can. Committee chairs, I would like it if those came through, but Brian has told me that we cannot bring them up from committee like we could with a bill. So policy books have got to come through committees.
All right, any further discussion on the agenda? All right, seeing no further discussion, it's adopted. We're moving to the adoption of the minutes. Discussion on the minutes from the 17th meeting. All right, seeing no discussion, it's adopted without objection. Moving to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the time?
When will the newly built website be available?
The AUSG website? That's dependent on the secretary, so I know the secretary is still working on updating the website. I want to say it's anticipated to be later in the month, but his cabinet is here, so they would probably be in a more better position to answer that. Of course. Any other public comment? All right, seeing no public comment. Moving to reports from officers. First to Chief of Staff Bardo.
Hi, I'm just gonna tap you on the shoulder a little bit. Hi everyone, so my name is Ryan Bardo. If I have not met you already or last semester, so I'm just gonna go through a little bit about what I've been up to and what this position is. All right, so in the past, the Chief of Staff position has really been kind of whatever the president has made it out to be, basically serving the president, all of their duties, etc. However, with my position, I wanted to make it something more important. I remember being a senator, sitting in the exact same seats as you are, literally, and having Chief of Staff come up here and say, oh, meet with me if you want to work over policy, if you want to find out what the president's up to. I did that, and all my other questions and yours did. However, nothing came out of that meeting. We met, we wrote down some notes, and that was it. I don't want to be that Chief of Staff to you all. I want to be a Chief of Staff not only for the president, but the entire student government. So first, not only serving President Chan, but also communicating and assisting the entire executive branch, as well as the entirety of AUSG, including you all and all of your counterparts. being a liaison between the executive branch and the legislative branch. We all work on so many different things. A lot of us work on similar things. However, there's no communication and collaboration on that part. So while the Senate is working literally on the same exact issue as the executive branch, we're going in 2 different locations, not helping each other out. And I think there needs to be more partnership in that front. And if there is more partnership and collaboration on that, then we're able to be more successful in our duties to serve the student body. Programming and advocacy. Throughout this upcoming year, I want to plan a lot of programming and advocacy, and I'll go through that with you in the next slide. Okay, so progress updates. This is what I've been up to. So first year student outreach over the entire summer, and also over the entire summer and throughout the beginning of the year. I worked this one too. I worked a lot on student outreach in regards to tabling, making sure. You can even make the smallest thing. I know some of you may have seen our board. Have the speaker and who the executive branch is. That thing takes a lot of time and work, but it also attracted a lot of students when we were tabling, making sure that we are communicating with first year students, getting them out. And I think we are, because the things that I've heard and the students that have come up to me are very interested, not only especially running in the Senate, but joining a lot of the programming boards, which is good, because in order for us to last as an organization, we not only need input from the entire student government, but we also need people to be in this organization. Recruitment is actually a big thing for us. AUSG community building. I really want to focus on this a lot, all of us sitting in this room and outside of it, we don't really know each other. The branches don't really know each other. It's been an issue since I was a freshman, again, sitting in the same exact seats. The executive branch doesn't know who the senators are. The senators don't know who the programming boards are, who's the staff on here. We all see ourselves as separate organizations, but we're all under one unity, AUSG, and we should be able to bond and collaborate together. So I want to focus on that. Whether it be even hosting little parties at my house. I'm down to do whatever is necessary to get us all to become friends with each other, so that way we can build collaboration with each other and therefore be more successful in the student body together. Internal communication, focused on a lot, on communication between the executive branch as a whole, especially over the summer. So we created a separate Facebook page, Facebook group, specifically for the executive branch and all of its other counterparts to communicate with each other on the programming boards, with Angela's cabinet and things like that, to make sure that we are able to communicate effectively with each other and people know what's going on. In the past, there have been certain, whether it be a KPU event or a sub event, and or even an advocacy side event, no one knows about it. No one shows up. I want us to be able to support each other and support each other's initiatives. And the way we do that is by combining all of our networks together in order to get the word out there. Alumni outreach. In the past, this goes back with AUSG community building, right? We don't really see ourselves as a unified organization or a unified branch. So therefore, our alumni, they come and go, and that's it. So I created a Facebook page Facebook group specifically for our alumni to keep them involved in what we're doing, and also so they can keep us involved in what they're doing. Like past AUSG president, Sarah McBride is running for Delaware State Senate, I believe it is. That's amazing. We should be able to support her accomplishments as well as she has always been supporting our accomplishments. Annual leadership banquets. This is something I've been trying to do for the summer. Things I wanted to do in the beginning of the year. However, things have been just finding a venue is hard. I want to have an annual leadership banquet for student government and also outside guests, so that people can see, number one, what our goals are for this upcoming year, what we've been able to accomplish, what we plan to accomplish, specifically from the executive branch side and also the Senate side. 2, help the student government know exactly help the student government just entirely know exactly what we're up to on the executive branch side. 3, invite outside guests. Have faculty there, staff there, inviting Sylvia Burwell, inviting Dr. Fonta all to not only meet you all, so you're able to create that partnership with them and they put a name to a face, but also so that they can see what we're up to. So this is an annual thing I want to really start. We're trying to do it for December. I'm trying to get it at a couple embassies right now. So looking at those locations and those venues, hopefully I'll have more word back from you from there. If you guys all know an accessible venue, let me know. I want your thoughts and your opinions on this. If you want it off campus, on campus, what you would want this to look like. What I'm looking at it like right now is exactly what I described, and having it off campus, and an embassy, making a more formal banquet type event, I feel will attract students and also just be a fun time for us all to bond and get together. Okay, next slide. So upcoming goals. I want to finalize the banquet and get that information to you all there. If you have any opinions on that, please let me know. I want to create more of a partnership with you all. Being my role, acting as kind of liaison between the executive branch and the Senate. If you all have anything you need, right? Whether you don't, an administrator's not reaching out to you, or you have policy goals and updates that you want to work on, I'm here to help you. I sat in your seat, I wrote the legislation up and saw a lot of my bills just go to dust. Just grab the dust from the goddamn cabinet in the Senate office. That is not what this body is supposed to be. This is the legislative branch. You are all supposed to be creating the advocacy more even so than the executive side is. So if I can help in any way, I know a lot of administrators and staff at the school, in all my 4 years, so please let me help if I can. I do want to host an AUSG mixer where we all can get together, whether it be at my house or another location. I'm down to have you all over and we'll just hang out and have fun and get to know each other. Policy books, I'm also going to be working on a lot of policy books. In the past, the President's Office has always submitted a policy book. However, in the last 2 to 3 years or so, there has been a decline in that. I want to get us back to that. For example, student rights cards. That went up across bulletin boards across the school. That only started by a policy book for student rights that started 4 years ago, or actually 5 years ago, by past AUSG President Pat Kelly. These things matter whether or not they are able to be implemented now. They can help the student government in future years. So if you're interested in any policy books or you have any ideas that you would like to see a book on, let me know and we can partner together. And with that, are there any questions? So I know I talk fast. I'm from Jersey, just my style. So, all right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also, did you get Angela's?
Yes, were you gonna put on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Bring that up.
It's a good science project.
Okay, speaking for President Chen in this capacity. All right. So yes, here I am, and this is also Amanda, basically my counterpart and also best friend. She's chief of operations. She handles a lot of logistics, booking these rooms, booking tables, things like that. Also, she handles our internal calendar for events across the entire student government to make sure that we're not having single events on the same day and creating organization in that capacity. This is Director of Case, Cassie. They just had a event in the bridge. It was a really good event. They're working on 2 Title IX events and a conduct code event. They also want to be with a table throughout these next 2 weeks. So definitely stop by if you see her or any one of the case counterparts there. She's meeting with Katie Foltz to discuss putting in case resources in residence halls. That exactly has to do with student rights cards. Make sure that was our original goal when I was part of case, to have those student rights cards up on the back of every door in every hall, which is just a good resource for students to know. And yeah, doing cases, obviously. Okay, and here we have Atanasha Survey and Diamond Terrell, who's our DEI co-directors. They had an affinity group mixer, which went really well. We'll both be hosting office hours for up to this week. You can see the office hours there. Monthly videos from them to have updates with the student body, because I think it's important for us not to only have outreach in regards to having events and things like that and tabling, but also just social media, which is something that we don't always use properly. We're working on an event related to the rising cost of tuition. Okay, we have a Director of Executive Board Accountability, Chanel. Chanel also just had an op-ed done in the Eagle. You should not an op-ed, but just an article written in the Eagle. You should all read about that. This is a new position to any type of cabinet before. It's focused all directly on Executive Board Accountability. So she attends every one of the e-board meetings. She writes up e-board minutes and we post it on the Facebook page. You might have just saw the last minutes that were posted last week. She's trying to hold a town hall with RHA in November, and she's also meeting up with each of the executive board members individually, and we'll probably have those notes written up for you all. She also wants to work on a Meet the E-board event. I think there's a big lack of, not only accountability, but just communication with regards to the student body, but who our leaders are. I think it's important for them to get to know us, and Chanel's working exactly on that issue. All right, Director of Financial Aid and Affordability, Mitchell. You want to do a Know Your Financial Aid Counselor tabling this Monday. So the issue, I don't know if any of you've experienced this, I for sure have. I had no idea who my financial aid counselor was. Then finally, when I found out who he was, emailed him 5 times. No one got back to me. I ended up finding out that he left the office, got a new financial aid counselor. That counselor ended up leaving the office too. It really sucks for students who are financially dependent. So he wants to get to, and students just in general don't know that they even have a financial aid counselor. Never mind that they even know they have an academic advisor. So he wants to have a tabling event where you are able to easily and accessibly locate who your financial aid advisor is. That way it helps students to know where they can ask their questions to and who to go to. He's planning a workshop with the financial aid office. There's always been a division between the student body and the financial aid office. However, we can create that partnership, and we can actually get things done and have progress there, which is so important. And planning a student debt protest and lobbying day on the Hill. So if you have any questions for any of these cabinet members, always feel free to reach out to them. All right, Director of Student Experience Enrichment, Nancy, going to reach out to HPAC about partnering on an event in student wellness and substance abuse and stress management. All right, then we have our Director of Community Service Coalition, Josh. I'm so proud of Josh because the CCES has always been a position in the student government. It's been in the Constitution, but year after year, people get into this position and just see it as BS, honestly, and do nothing about it. Not even having an event. Ever since I was a freshman, I can't remember an event that CCS had. But he is doing it. He is doing the work, which is so important. So in September, he's having sustainability September, he's having a sustainability event, which is focused on having sustainability. It's on the Instagram and Facebook page, more information. He just recently had a successful item swap, which is an AUSG item swap, which was awesome and also just such a good idea. I never even heard about something like that, which is cool. He's partnered with Chartwell's to create a sustainable dining choices like campus graphic. Yeah, again, sustainability and youth speaking event this Monday. He's partnering with AU Sustainability Office. We're talking about what that looks like, how students can get involved, and also be more sustainable on this campus. And please, yeah, follow CSC on Facebook and Instagram. It's so important if you guys want to keep up to date on those events. And again, don't feel free to hesitate to reach out to Angela. She follows back, I can guarantee that. And her phone number is here. Also, if you want my phone number, it's in the AUSG directory, so feel free to do that. Any questions on the presidential side, or anything, pass along to President Chen. Cool. Thank you for putting up with my loud and fast talking.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Now moving to your report from October's admin. You have a slide, right?
No, but Mark knows on the minutes that I emailed to you. Hi, everybody. Normally I get up and talk about budget and things. The budget's all going well. And of course, if you have any questions about that, you can ask me as well. But today we are hearing from a member of my cabinet, Mark, who is the Assistant Comptroller for Research. I'm just here to reacquaint the Senate with what his position and that whole business is with financial research. This year, under my cabinet, student government has a financial research office where we will be doing research and putting out reports about university finances and financial issues, university financial policies, and we have one of those today that Mark will be presenting on. And this whole idea that I'm working on, and of which this is the first report that's coming out today, was motivated by an experience that student government has had over the past 2 years. For 2 years ago, the Senate and the Finance Committee came out with a general report looking at a bunch of different affordability policies for the university. And then last year, during the university budget cycle, our representative to the administrators who was working with them to create the current university budget used that report to advocate for certain affordability measures, and the administrators and trustees were really receptive to it. They were really appreciative of the research, and although nothing in that report was really any revolutionary idea that no one had ever heard of, it did allow the students who were involved in that process to have an avenue at every possible angle to bring in affordability to the discussion. So it was always present in those discussions. So this year we are expanding on that, and instead of just having one brief survey report about affordability as an issue, we're going to be putting out reports about once per month. These are pretty detailed. Today, Mark is going to talk about a report that we are releasing today about fixed tuition, guaranteed tuition policies. You all have that in your email, I believe, if you're in the Senate. If not, I can send it to you. It'll be up on the website eventually, and I have one physical copy here for anyone who wants it. So before we switch to Mark, does anybody have any questions for me about either my regular comptroller stuff like the budget or about the financial research office in general? All right, and at the end of Mark's report, if you have any questions about this report, you can ask him, and I can also answer questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. And now to Mark for his report.
Shoot, it's a PowerPoint but fancy. Actually don't know. It's been a while. Feel like it's a while.
Need help?
Here's an arrow.
Mr. Steve, point of order, is there a timer to his report?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm Assistant Comptroller for Research. I'm here presenting about fixed tuition today. Want to check out my fancy PowerPoint. Press the arrow. It'll zoom into the middle. There we go. Fixed tuition. We have two priorities when we're researching different strategies for making college more affordable for students. The first is affordability, and the second is transparency. It helps factors into student planning. It helps the overall affordability of students completing a four-year career. Down arrow. Boom. What is fixed tuition? The whole point is that tuition doesn't increase. However, potential increases as determined by the higher education index are factored into fixed tuition. So you get charged a higher amount first 2 years in a process called front loading, where all the potential increases are sort of pushed onto the first 2 years. You pay less the second 2 years. Basically, it's a flat rate. There's a graph. Press the arrow. There you go. Another arrow. So this is an example. I think it was Bobby who termed the term certainty premium, basically. This is what we have now, tuition increases each year. This is not us, this is Hofstra, but this is traditional, and then the purple line is the traditional mean of the traditional tuition rate, which means that it is just the average out of all 4 years. But in the fixed tuition structure, this is the real rate that you would pay all 4 years. The reason it goes up a bit, that's termed the certainty premium because you're basically paying a fee to have tuition not go up, to have tuition stay the same amount per year. Next. Now, there's another important thing called the non-persistence penalty. This wasn't termed by us. This was termed by researcher Christopher Morphew in a Change article from 2007. Basically, think about it like this. You pay more than your classmates who are on the traditional plan because you're on a fixed plan the first 2 years. Now, imagine if you leave the university and, halfway through, you're 2 years and you leave, you'll have paid more per credit hour than you should have. You would have overpaid for an education. And this applies to transfers and dropouts. And that leads into a different conversation that Morphew, the researcher, also brought up about how fixed tuition structures would negatively impact students of certain communities that are vulnerable to dropping out, students who transfer after 2 years, students who work to support themselves. They are more prone to dropping out, and they are most vulnerable in their first year. So one of our metrics to determine the feasibility of this plan was first and second year retention. So this is basically the article. This is from a research report from the University of Illinois researchers Kearney and Delaney. They're experts in this sort of thing, and they're the authors of a lot of the literature that comes out on this topic. There's not a lot of research on it. Anyway, yeah, that's basically what I just said. Basically front loading, and then so we looked at it. We compared it to AU's data because we're really researching this program to be implemented on a campus like AU. There's minority students, and then there's first generation students. These are 1 year retention rates. This is from freshman year to sophomore year. Did you leave? I almost did personally, but I'm still here. But a lot of people actually do leave. This would affect them. And what we see here is that disparities vary. Disparities don't seem to, at a public university, you'd see a bigger disparity, less variation. But here, it's really close. Of course, for first generation students, 1 year retention rates for first generation students are consistently lower, even if by thin margins. Continue. Next, we look at, does it work? Question of the day, the question we are all asking. There are several key research variables I mentioned, but the two main ones were the overall cost of attendance over 4 years and the first, second year retention that I mentioned. So is there an example? The illusion of choice. Oh yeah, it'll zoom into the main one first and then go, there we go. GW, our sister university, it's close. It's close to us. It's like us, student body, very similar to ours. They actually adopted a fixed tuition program back in 2004. Retention rates hovered around 91% for a bit and then started varying a little. So can't really say if the fixed tuition was responsible for that, but I'll get to that later. Basically, in terms of student planning, a 2013 survey that the financial office at GW put out, 71% of respondents said that fixed tuition was a factor in their decision to enroll, 25% calling it a large influence, 76% of first-gen students said it was an influence, and 33% said it was a large influence. Next. Now, well, you see the immediate effects affecting this sort of plan. In 2004, they affected fixed tuition. In 2005, they increased tuition by 16%, which is crazy. Our tuition increase last year was 3%. And then in the second year, it was 7%. And this crazy sort of adjustment, if we compare it to how GW has kept their growth rates below 4% for a bit, we can see that fixed tuition really is a market decision for GW. It says, they literally said that. This is an article from the the GW Hatchet. They did an article on this about how they're going to start cutting down on enrollment, and therefore they got to get rid of the fixed plan because you don't get any marketing benefits from the fixed plan if you want enrollment to go down to avoid stuff like housing congestion, excessive accepted classes, whatever. Next. And then now we have two different situations on the research and literature that is conducted. There are campuses that have compulsory programs, which means you get in, your tuition's fixed. And there's another one where you go in and you can choose whether you want your tuition to be fixed or whether you want it in the traditional sense. 3 public universities, University of Illinois. We can see the effects on the overall cost of a 4-year college career at the University of Illinois. Fixed tuition was mandated by a state law. It left out student fees, so the University of Illinois raised fees, and that contributed to an increase in the overall cost of attendance. Western Oregon University, $1,266, that's going to go up at private universities. And a University of Kansas, every single year since 2009, fixed tuition, students have paid more. Next. And then this is a natural experiment. You can do some regression analysis with this. You have students who opt into the fixed plan, students who stay on the traditional plan. Like I said, private universities, fixed students are likely to pay much more than at private universities. Hofstra, students taking the fixed tuition option paid a total of almost $3,000 more than standard. And Hofstra is one of those campuses where you can choose. And the University of Virginia, fixed tuition, attorney premium totaled $3,700 over a 4-year period. So not so great. Retention and graduation rates. Retention can be thought of as 1 to 2 year. Graduation rates, 4-year completion, obviously. We looked at a bunch of regression models at the 3 aforementioned universities. And you can see that there's no real, first of all, there's no statistically significant effect that fixed tuition has on retention. And secondly, it's largely associated with slight negative trajectories in retention rates, actually. Like I said, overall negative correlation. That was from I believe, some research out of the University of Wyoming. And this other research came from Delaney and Kearney from the University of Illinois. I mentioned them earlier. Next. And finally, this is a cool thing. UT Austin, they had a fixed plan. And obviously, over the 4-year career, you're paid like a couple $1,000s more than if you went on the standard plan, as we saw from the research. But this rebate, basically, if you graduate within 4 years, they'll give you $3,500 back. That pretty much kills the certainty premium. That kills, the certainty premium. That's the extra you pay. And it makes college slightly, if not the thinnest margin, slightly less expensive. Of course, I'm actually going to go to this right after this because there's a reason why AU, as a really tuition-dependent school, almost 85%, 87%, I think, was last year's annual report. That was the figure. They have an 87% dependence on tuition rates. So they're already strapped for cash, and fixed tuition would put an unnecessary constraint on them. Can't deal with individual students on an individual basis. Less decisions being made, less management of operating funds. That's a category. Next. Right, administrative concerns. Oh, my bad. 83%, not 87%. Fixed tuition program likely to be unapproved, not to be approved, because, compare the figures. GW has a $1.8 billion endowment, which means they have a lot more, it's easier for them to manage their operating funds. And I think their dependency was 60%. Ours is 83%. That's not good. And is there anything after that? Oh, and it zooms back out. Yeah, so that's the report. I can answer any questions. Bobby can answer any questions.
Just, can I add one more
Yes,
thing to this
please.
report? That if anyone wants a refined version of that, we have 9 specific findings that we summarize on page 5 of the report, if you just want a little summary.
Questions?
Yes.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is, when we're considering the impact of possible plans, you have the option to only have this specific plan that you're talking about, or you could opt in and/or have this plan. How would those options sort of compare in terms of impact as opposed to the current state, which is, the tuition can change year to year, and with with tuition insurance? Ultimately, does tuition insurance have sort of a different kind of impact to the variables we discussed, as opposed to what these new plans would incur instead?
Well, economists will tell you that more choice is better. We looked at GW and Hofstra. Those were the two college period institutions we looked at.
Mhm.
We found Hofstra's plan much more, favorable. There was a less net loss. There was a more leaks. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, I think I'm going to say what you're going to say. But when you compare compulsory plans to optional plans, the optional plans, they're both more expensive for students overall than traditional tuition that rises every year. But of the two increases, the optional plans increase by a smaller amount because it's about a transfer of risk. Under a traditional plan, you assume the risk that your tuition might go up. Under a fixed plan, the university assumes the risk that they can't be flexible with their finances, so you pay more for that certainty. It's the certainty premium. So because there are more students, there's less flexibility under a compulsory everybody's a fixed tuition. That'll be more expensive than an optional plan. And like Mark mentioned, we looked at Hofstra, which has an opt-in fixed tuition. But something to note just for reference when thinking about it is that according to Hofstra, very few students use that. We couldn't find any numbers anywhere of what part of the student body uses their fixed tuition plan, but Hofstra says it's a small amount.
Just one more.
Yeah.
If there were, like, if there were the state that, you ended up having this plan that you could opt in, or you have the regular tuition increase in junior year, how would AU actually communicate to prospective students what the 1-year tuition rate is if there's multiple options?
Well,
If you look at GW, it's just like, you market the fixed plan to students who are trying to prepare to pay for college. They're looking, a large part of the GW plan was to market to students saying your tuition isn't going to go up if you choose this plan.
and
Was that your question?
Well, what I'm asking is like, so what was described in this plan was that you front load the cost, so you pay more for the first 2 years
Yeah.
than the last 2, as opposed to right now where we just have one figure that we say is sort of the regular tuition rate here, and that will change year to year. How would AU actually communicate what the 1-year price is to students who are looking to come if there's those two different plans where one is they have that number that they chose for that year, but you can't
Right.
say what the 1-year cost is if it's going to change.
Well,
Or
there's
if it's
two-
different from the first 2 than the last 2.
Right, there's 2 first-year costs, right? There's a standard one and the fixed one. The fixed one's more, but I guess you could just say you'll pay less than everybody else in your last 2 years. Does that answer your question? There's 2 different tuition rates.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is that like right now, if you looked up the AU website, it said you pay like I think it's like around 70 is the regular tuition rate.
Right.
So if you had this 4-year plan where the first 2 years are different than the last 2, in order to not mischaracterize what the actual tuition rate that they'd be paying is, how would AU actually express to students what that cost is?
Here, can I try this? Under a fixed plan, it's not actually the case that the amount you pay in the last 2 years is less. It's just less relative to a traditional plan because a traditional plan goes up every year and fixed tuition stays flat. So it's relatively more in the front end and relatively less at the back end. And then schools that do have an optional fixed tuition like Hofstra, normally you're by default in the traditional plan. And if you opt into the fixed plan, you sign an agreement with Hofstra that specifies in the agreement how much your fixed tuition plan is. So that's how other universities communicate what the rate is to their students. By when you agree to the fixed tuition, you agree to the rate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob?
I just wanted to say, this is a great report. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Bobby. I'm really glad that we're doing this this year. I was around 2 years ago when we were having these discussions when people were really passionate about this, and I think this report illustrates that like you can have really good ideas, but just because like not every good idea is the right one, is the right fit for AU. And I think that I look forward to seeing other reports that come out of the office. So I don't know if you have any plans to release this to the Eagle or any other student organizations, but definitely please do that. I see Dan right there. Connect, please.
Thank you. And also, what you're talking about, the front loading. A lot of people I talked about fixed tuition, they didn't see that aspect. They thought, tuition stays the same, like frozen tuition. Like we're doing a report on tuition freeze soon, and and that's completely different. Sorry, was that not supposed to be?
No, that's fine.
Okay. It's basically, not from, when you think fixed tuition, you think one rate every year. You don't think, oh, all the potential increases get factored into the first 2 years, just so it'll stay flat. It's like transparency, but not affordability. That's our two priorities, and one was fulfilled and one was not. So yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing no further questions, thanks, Mark. Good job. All right, now moving to Secretary Kwan's comment, and then your name again, I'm sorry.
I'm Dolly.
INDA.
Ella. So I'm Dolly. I'm a first-year fellow in Secretary's Cabinet, and I'm here by proxy on behalf of James Kwan. So there aren't any major updates, but the one main update is that James talked with Bobby about website purchases. So they will be moving forward on that. And should there be any questions, you can redirect that to either James or Bobby.
Any questions for Dolly? All right, seeing no questions, thank you. All right, now moving to the report from Chair Fu.
Hello, everybody. I apologize. I'm sick, so I sound gross. I've got a lot of things to talk about. After last week's meeting, when we approved the judicial register, there was an amendment made to it that said that if J-Board finds a rule invalid, that it isn't taken, that it's invalid, but it's not taken out of the document, and then J-Board has to submit that document with the changes in it to Senate for their approval. I used my power in the judicial register to order an injunction on that, so basically kind of a pause on it, and it doesn't have any effect until we dealt with it. We dealt with it and said that that provision, not the entire section of that, but that part was unconstitutional, so we got rid of it. It's not in there anymore. If you have concerns about that, that was a little bit of a hot topic last week, so if you want to talk, we can do that. On the 25th, the inspector submitted 6 unofficial inquiries to me before that date, and I can't adjudicate unofficial inquiries, but I can make unofficial inquiries official ones, so I did that with all 6 of them, and then I accepted them. The board issued 6 unanimous opinions. So me, Heyman, Layla, and Alex all got together and ruled in unanimously on these things. The first one is I've sent these opinions to Sean, and I think Sean sent them all to you. There were like 8 documents in that email, I think, so there was a lot of reading. I understand you can read all of them. But if you want to reference it, 14.007 regarded the amendment process. Article 8, Section 1, subsection 4, it laid out the process by which policy books can be amended. It said that Senate can't propose amendments to policy books, and only maintaining officials can propose legislation. We decided that was unconstitutional. We said that it was Senate granting legislative authority to members who were not a part of the undergraduate Senate and tying Senate's hands on matters that it had every right to involve itself in. So that's gone. So the whole process of like Senate can't propose policy books anymore, like that's gone. 14.008, Article 8, Section 2, subsection 4 is in the same realm as that. That one specifically lays out the rules of the rules to make a quorum policy book. It stated that only CRP was the maintaining official group thing. We said that, and it says that the rules of making quorum amendments only needed 1 reading in the committee and only need to be approved by the committee. Then it was assumed that it had been adopted by the whole body. So we said that stripped senators who weren't on CRP of their right to vote on changes to rules to make a quorum. And so because legislative authority is vested in the undergraduate Senate, we saw it as taking away a vote from senators who had every right to discuss, amend, and vote on the rules that bind them in this full body. 14.009, Article 5.7, Section 7, subsection 2, regards, I don't know, I think it's not the elections, it's the section about the undergraduate Senate. It regards new members. So when there's an election, what happens with new members? It's titled entrance test. So it mandates that new members, whether the elected members of the new Senate, whether they're returning or new, need to pass an entrance test. And the wording was before they can assume, again, but it's the assume a seat, their seat in the undergraduate Senate. That's not a quote, but that wording of assume the seat was in there, that they have to pass a test before they can assume their seat. The Constitution uses pretty much the same wording to say that once a senator is elected, they assume a seat in the undergraduate Senate. So to say that a senator has to get elected, but then also pass a test before assuming, it violates the Constitution. So we got rid of that. We did say Senate has every right to create procedures to make sure new senators have everything they need to be prepared for their job. They just can't do anything that bars them from being a full senator after they're elected. After they're elected, they're elected. They have full voting privileges. They can propose amendments, legislation, whatever. They don't need to pass a test after being elected. 14.010, in the bylaws, Article 7, Section 1, Subsection 5, titled Policy Board Responsibilities. This has to do with elections. So the elections commission, policy committee, or board, they're kind of used interchangeably, said that official policy interpretation by the board constituted authoritative precedent, and said that J Board can use it to base our opinions on election matters to them. So we said that was incorrect because authoritative precedent and saying that J Board can base our decisions essentially equates policy interpretation with a governing document, because J Board can only base our real concrete decisions on the governing documents, and like even J Board decisions don't create authoritative precedent. If J Board decisions aren't deemed governing documents unless they're parliamentary inquiries, but so we decided that was too much power to that. And I talked to Iman, the elections commissioner. He said that he understood our logic behind that. I'm sorry, there's just a lot going on here. 14.011 has to do with the elections policy book. The next two have to do with the elections policy book. Article 1, Section 1, Subsection 4 said that the Elections Commission Policy Committee had the exclusive power to offer authoritative clarification interpretations on any document governing elections. So we had a number of problems with that exclusive authority. The committee can't wield the exclusive authority to interpret and offer clarifications to documents related to elections. So because J Board has a say in that too, with the final authority on those documents. Authoritative, that was also a little problematic, a little less problematic, but the authoritative answer comes from J Board ultimately, if we get involved. And any document governing elections was problematic because earlier in the book it says that it lists the documents that govern elections, and it says Constitution, bylaws, use register, all that. So the committee would have the authority to offer interpretations on any of those documents concerning elections. And then the last one, but not the last thing I have to talk about, also elections policy book, Article 2, Section 1, Subsection 3, said that the Elections Commission Policy Committee could waive requirements for special and referendum elections. That was pretty clear cut for us that that's not allowed. Like the elections, there are regulations in the bylaws and Constitution about special and referendum elections. The committee can't just waive those. And Imam, like I said, I told him about all this while this was going on. He said he found our opinion reasonable. The decisions were final, no appeals, all that stuff. And then, okay, the new stuff. Last night I got an email from Joyce DeSource Filing, it was an unofficial inquiry technically because it wasn't done through the website, regarding, how the executives handled the student involvement fund, which is something that Bobby's talked about. It's the prize of giving 20 students $500, right, Bobby? 20 students $500, right? There were questions about how the executives were handled the establishment of that, during the summer. And sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. And so Joyce also requested an injunction to say that, for the moment, until this is fully adjudicated, student government can't be involved in, reviewing applications for the fund. I granted that just for the sake of ensuring that we're not getting involved in something ex post facto that we shouldn't have been involved in the first place. J-Board, again, I and J-Board haven't decided anything on this. The inquiry is just a precaution. The questions were, are the requirements for the fund, specifically regarding the credit requirement, discriminatory? And did the executives overstep their authority by binding student government to this agreement, kind of overstep the summer legislative authority that's granted to them in the bylaws? So I made it official, I accepted it, I decided it has to have, a formal resolution, in judicial opinion. There will be a hearing on this. Right now, the hearing is scheduled for Friday at 1 o'clock. I am going to, that's tentative, as a tentative thing, so it may change. But the hearing will happen within this week. We have 5 days, 5 business days to figure it out. There's 4 people on J-Board, but only 3 of us will be considering this inquiry. Alex Russo, the vice chair of J-Board, recused himself because, I don't know if you saw, but in the Eagle, he gave an interview about supporting the fund and saying that he was going to apply to it himself. He said that, and I agree with him, that this obviously created a conflict of interest, dealing with the inquiry. So there are only 3 of us dealing with this. Under those circumstances, the rules say that if there's 3 or less of J-Board members, discussing anything, then we have to be unanimous. So if we're not unanimous, nothing happens, basically. I'm going to be discussing this with, I know there's probably a lot of jurisdictional concerns here, and I have those same ones too. I will be discussing this with Ayana and, people who are involved in the student involvement fund, because this goes beyond just student government. It's not an internal matter entirely. It's got other clubs involved, and it's got the university involved. So I'm going to talk with her about that, and then I can, update you all on how that works out. That's it formally for me. This inquiry is a complicated one. It will be dealt with in the manner that I've described, with a proper hearing, and we'll follow all the procedures that we're mandated to. But it's complicated, and it's pondered J-Board a little bit.
All right, questions for the chair? Jeremy?
Just one question, can they still apply to it during this period?
The application
Deadline
period,
is passed.
yeah, the application period.
Oh, okay.
So that's another factor. Jacob?
So, just a few things. First, I'll just say, as somebody who sits on back, the deadline's already passed. We haven't reviewed any applications, and the application review process is supposed to take place sometime, I believe, in October, is what we had said, was that when BAC was going to convene. And just to clarify for those people that are new, the Student Involvement Fund was set up like before I was even here at AU by another president, and it was designed with the idea that there are students who get involved in a lot of things, they don't get paid for their involvement, and it would be nice if we could somehow supplement their involvement with some money. And I want to dispel a few notions, and if you have any questions, of course you can ask me. But it's a fund that every year has been receiving money from not just AUSG. We've all been taking turns. The members of BAC have been taking turns with groups. So it's AUSG contributed, AUCC has contributed, and student media has contributed. So that's the first thing. The fund receives funds from those three groups. And we each take turns, we've each been taking turns each year. Last year it was our turn, so we contributed money. One, I have the documentation explaining all of that and also letting you know how much we put in. I don't remember exactly how much we put in, but it was, I believe the figure was somewhere around $10,000 or $20,000 in line with what we've normally been doing. So that's the first thing. So the injunction doesn't do anything to for us because we're not reviewing applications right now. So it's not like we have to stop. That's not going to happen until October, mid-October. So this will be adjudicated by then. My question, upon which I have many, I don't know how much you can get into, is I'm just confused if the argument is essentially that the executives didn't have any power, don't have the power to enter into this agreement, wouldn't this have been an issue that should have been adjudicated years ago when this was getting set up? And if the issue is with BAC in general, then isn't the BAC charter that the Senate has ratified, wouldn't that, in effect, the Senate gives the power to the executives to do that?
Yeah, so, so yes, this program has been going on for a while. The reason that's been taken up now is that the inquiry was just filed. I wasn't here, I wasn't even a student here when Devontae was president. But I know personally very little about the Student Enrollment Fund, and its mechanics, because I am not a money person, you're a finance person, Bobby is a finance person. So J-Board really isn't in the business of telling student government what to do with its money, because that's not really our job. But with regard, Senate giving the executives the right to do that. There is that other question of, can Senate delegate legislative authority to other people? That was kind of the question that came up with the amendment process or policy books. Like, and it's in the decision saying, the question was, does having authority to propose amendments to policy books constitute legislative authority, and does the Senate have the right to delegate legislative authority? And we decided no. Those decisions aren't binding, so we don't have to use that same logic if we can. So just that's an example. In our decision in that, we decided that the Senate doesn't have the authority to delegate its legislative authority. That's just an example from another decision. That's not me saying that's my decision or the J-Board's decision. That's just an example of a question of legislative authority. So that would have to be, that question of legislative authority delegation would have to be brought up in the conversation if it were to.
Well, is there a distinction between legislative authority and budgetary authority? My first question. And the second question would be if a senator sits on the committee that creates the budget, then in effect, doesn't the Senate have the power then? Is the Senate be given the power if a senator is on that board?
Yeah, so what was the budgetary question? Oh, the distinction between legislative and budgetary. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot in the Constitution about money other than the undergraduate Senate controls the money. So there's that distinction, I guess, but it states in the Constitution somewhere that it'll control funds through the passing of legislation. So I would just initially say that legislative authority and budgetary authority are somewhat bound at the hip because Senate can't just send money places without legislating it. The second part to your question, what was it?
If the senator.
Oh, the senator's on back. Yeah. That is a factor, unfortunately, because the wording of the governing document is that the entire Senate has legislative authority and the entire Senate is controlling the money. I don't know, again, I can't comment on what I would or am going to decide about what a representative from Senate in those discussions means in terms of the legislative and the budgetary authority of Senate. So honestly, just your questions, I guess, I don't really know.
Bobby?
Thank you. Just really quick, this is very complex, and I think that we risk getting tied up in the weeds here if we go too deep into this here, considering that nothing has happened on this front yet, and there will be a hearing. So I would just say, if you have questions about the mechanics of the Student Involvement Fund, I can answer that. If you have opinions about this inquiry, I would be interested to hear them, but I don't think that it is appropriate or proper for us to get too deep into what should be taking place in the hearing today. So I would encourage us not to.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, thanks, Brian. All right, and for me, so I sent all of those and sent it the notification of the event last night. So if you would like to release a statement on that or release a resolution relating to that, feel free to let me know. In terms of committees, so Student Rights and Services, CADA, and Finance, please meet regarding the policy books that are assigned to you, and I'll be releasing a legislative order regarding that. Oh, and then we will be starting a freshman fellowship program. So we'll have 5 new freshmen in Senate. They're purely going to be observing Senate. They won't have speaking rights or voting rights. They'll only have speaking rights during the public comment portion. And I'll be releasing a legislative order detailing those as well. And so if you know any freshmen who would like to get involved, please do encourage them to apply. And then any questions for me?
Do you have any more details about the incident that happened last night?
None that were given to me directly. The only details I have was just that Twitter post that I shared with you. Yeah. But if you would like me to find out the details, we can definitely do that. Jacob?
I'm just confused, like, did it happen last night? Well, because if you look at the university Twitter, it says that they're it pertains to an incident that happened Wednesday. So I don't actually know when.
Yeah, I saw that post last night. I saw it around 11. It said it was posted 4 hours prior.
The original
Yeah.
tweet from your friend was from the 26th.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
A couple days ago.
Okay, I just saw it last night, so yeah, that's why I shared it. Any further questions for me?
Do we have any authority to learn more from the actual university, to get more information about it?
Yeah, you can certainly ask questions to them or ask a resolution.
I was gonna say though, do be careful, because you have to tread lightly on the lines of FERPA, because there's only so much you can find out about arrests, any kind of judicial inquiries and type stuff of the university, because unless the person who's in the situation themselves decides to declare the information public, they have to keep it confidential for legal purposes. You have every right to reach out to admin and whatnot and see what they can tell you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing no further questions, we'll move on. Seeing no reports from the committee, we'll move straight to new business. First, to the consideration of Bill 1819-010, the upholding separation of powers bill. Would any of the sponsors like to speak on that? All right, Jeremy?
Hello, everyone. Myself, Senator Soni, and Senator Rodriguez, we worked on this bill together. And like the summary that everyone received says, it is essentially seeks to amend the bylaws to prohibit executives who receive stipends from serving as Senate proxies. First and foremost, I know when you hear that, it seems like we're trying to insinuate something. So I just want to say this is against no one. I've been talking to people in my class, and I've heard things of the perception that we don't hold executives accountable, which is not true. And I think our executives have led in a very respectful manner and have been an example for all of us. However, I do think when it comes to perception, you definitely want people to understand that we do take our job seriously. So when it comes to proxies, that's kind of why we decided to propose this. Not that we've had any issues, it's just we want everyone to know, regardless of whether the senator they voted for can be there or not, that we will be holding everyone accountable, and we will be transparent in that, and that we don't want the perception to look as though that we are not. And I'd like to let my friend here give a few words.
Yeah, so I received the academic for 2019-2020, that's how much they make. And I just thought like, since they're already getting paid and like senators are not, like the difference. And I think if we don't have like proxies, executive survey as proxies, we could like have other people involved in student government and like see how it basically runs.
I have a point of inquiry, Sean. For the benefit of people who are new, since this is the first bill that we've considered in quite a few months, can you explain the process of how this goes down?
Sure, so as you just saw, the sponsors spoke, and then you'll have time to question the sponsors regarding the bill. And then we'll move into a period of debate and discussion on the bill. Any amendments you'd like to propose to the bill, that can be done there. And then if there's no objection, it'll go straight to CRP for first reading. First reading can be waived, and then it would just go straight to a vote.
And as a point of further inquiry, isn't it the case that at first reading, there's just questioning, and then if you waive first reading, then you go into debate after that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further inquiry? All right. You're done speaking? Okay. Questions for the sponsors? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Public can't question at this time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Will there be an opportunity for that?
during public comments, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Questions for the sponsors? All right, Parker?
So currently, people who are in the executive branch who receive stipends are allowed to concurrently serve in the Senate. So what is like, why would you not allow them to proxy for senators, but they can still be in the Senate?
My view of that is that the senator that works in the executive that already receives a stipend has already been voted in. And in my mind, that's different from someone who was voted that cannot be there, for them to appoint someone as their proxy to vote. I see the difference because when you're voted, you have to talk to the constituents and all of that. And they've found this trust in you for that. So when you get the new position, I think that they would have, they have voted for you. They have the trust that you'll be able to do the right thing in that. When it comes to a senator who has not or is, and then they cannot be there, and they have a proxy that is with this stipend, we're not saying that they don't have the ability to do as anyone else would do, because I do think they do, but it's a perception thing. So that's what we're getting at. A lot of people feel that the Senate, well, let me not say a lot, there are some people who feel that we don't hold people accountable, and I think this is one of the ways that we can ensure the perception of that we do take our job serious.
Further questions? Perfect.
A follow-up, so, but if we are, if you're saying that you trust senators who are elected, because they were elected and that they're accountable to their constituents, doesn't that also play over into their selection of a proxy?
I just feel like I feel like we should just like get more people involved with like outside the executive too and get like more people involved with like student government and see how they want to be.
And I would just add to that, if I were voting for a senator when I did, if that senator was not able to be there and they did have a proxy, just because they voted for them, I may not know the person who they've decided to be their proxy. So I wouldn't automatically say that just because I voted for said member, that I'd automatically have full faith and confidence in their proxy.
All right, further questions? Katie?
Yeah, so kind of a two-part question. First is, if your argument here is that the proxies weren't elected and therefore they shouldn't be able to like serve as a proxy, kind of what does that call into question the entire system of proxy in general because they weren't elected? And then if that's kind of the premise of this, wouldn't members of the executive branch in certain cases be almost more qualified to proxy because they were elected, some of them in their capacity, either as president, vice president, comptroller, rather than, say, a member of the executive cabinet.
Isn't that proxies weren't elected? We support proxies. Our thing is, we're just going with those who receive stipends.
Right.
In the executive should not be a proxy. And as far as the qualified aspect of it, I do find that.
You can finish.
Oh,
your
okay. You could venture to say that a lot of people in the executive that are voted in whatever their position may be qualified to understand what we do. But just because one is qualified to understand, I would also say that those who aren't in the executive aren't qualified to understand.
All right, timing for question has elapsed. Is there a motion?
My motion to accept in my 2 minutes.
Second. Discussion on the motion? Bobby?
I would just say that you can ask questions during, actually, never mind, you can't, because there is no discussion after this. Yeah, disregard what I just said.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move straight to vote on the motion. All those in favor of extending questioning for 2 minutes, say yay.
Yeah.
All opposed, say nay. All right, the yeas have it, and questioning will be extended for 2 minutes.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I wasn't saying that executives that were elected are more qualified than, say, other proxies because of their understanding. It was more so because they, like senators, are also directly elected by the student body. And so I guess kind of reposing my question in that context, why would it be that, say, like last week Milan was a proxy person, why is he all of a sudden excluded from this? Whereas if I weren't here today, I could kind of just take any student on campus who I felt represented my interests and put them in the Senate, and they might not have any understanding of the government doctrine.
When Milan did proxy, then there was no issue with that per se as far as saying that he just hearing that. We're just saying that when you have people that are receiving stipends, and the Senate is supposed to hold the executive accountable, from a perception aspect, if I can't be here and I would only choose someone of the executive, it would lead some people to question, which I've had people asking this question, whether or not we take it serious. We're not accusing anyone of doing anything. We're just saying, if we're supposed to hold them accountable, maybe we shouldn't allow them to be executives, not that they've done anything, proxies, not that they've done anything wrong, but just so the student body has full faith that we do take this accountability directive seriously.
Yeah, so I don't really have any strong opinions on either way, but I, just to like combat with the support, like the sponsors of this bill. For example, like let's say like one of the executive board members was going to be, put up for trial or trying to get kicked out, right? The Senate would have to vote whether or not they were going to do that, or if they wanted to be, they were fired, when the executive board branch members were fired and they needed to be, I don't know the correct term, but like, supported again and rehired by the Senate, because the Senate has the power to do that. Then, for example, like, let's say like whether or not one of the executive board members agree or disagree with that, they can therefore by proxy and therefore like support their decision or deny another board member's decision. So I think it's just like important. I do agree in the aspect that I don't think that would ever happen, but in the past there has been things that have happened like that. So I think it's good to maybe have those separation of boundaries there. So therefore, because at the end of the day, right, executive, we're all allowed to speak, but we can't vote. And having that separation and difference might be important in the case that something like that could potentially happen. Therefore, oh, hey, like, can I proxy for you on Sunday? Yeah, sure. And then goes and supports his or her own initiatives, paid representatives of student government, rather than a senator who volunteers basically every week. So.
All right, timing for questioning has elapsed. Is there a motion? Is there a second on that motion?
I second it.
Discussion on the motion? Bobby?
I believe there is the intention to waive first reading on this bill, so if that is the case, we could keep discussion to discussion, because that seems to be where this is trending.
All right, further discussion on the motion to extend questioning time. All right, seeing no discussion, we'll move straight to vote. Jacob? Okay, all right, we'll move straight to vote on the motion. All those in favor of extending questioning for 5 minutes, say yea.
Yay.
All opposed, say nay. All right, the ayes have it, questioning is extended for 5 minutes.
So I just have, I have two questions. My first question would be, what, if I as a senator who am elected can't make it to a meeting, and I believe that I am picking somebody to represent myself and the interests of my constituency, why would you be wanting to take that power away from me if I believe that that executive aligns with what I would want to, like what my agenda is, right? Like if I trust Bobby to represent me, why would you want to take that ability away from me? And then my second question would be, would you consider amending this so that if there is a concern about, like voting on like some kind of like judicial disciplinary action, that perhaps an executive board member could not proxy in that case, that you put up certain limits for when an executive can proxy and when an executive cannot proxy? Does it have to be an all or nothing thing?
I'll answer your second one first. I think that would be an interesting thing to do, and I have no issue with that, to be honest. No. And as far as your first question, I wouldn't say that I'm taking that power away from you per se. What I would say is, we are supposed to oversee that. From a perception angle, if I constantly pick someone that I'm theoretically supposed to oversee, it kind of looks fishy. I'm not saying that you don't trust them and that there's a reason for it to be fishy. It just kind of looks fishy to some people. But on your second thing, I would support that.
I would suggest that not waiting first reading, then just letting it go to first reading, and if there wants to be amendments to it, such as that, that would be the time and place to do it.
What do you think? Does Senate oversee the executive branch, or are they co-equal?
But we do have oversight power for
Okay.
cabinet to ensure executives are doing their job. Example, that would be last year with former Comptroller Gladden and Senator Adams. Any further questions? All right, seeing no further questions, this will be referred to CRP without objection. Yes.
What about the
public?
question? Siri?
That's not,
At the
yeah,
very end.
yeah, we're at the very end.
Oh, not, it wasn't in relation to the introduction of this bill.
So, yeah, public area. All right, moving to old business. Oh, sure.
A motion to waive first reading.
It's all.
Yeah.
Sean said without objection, Parker objects.
He hit the gavel. I mean,
Well,
Well, I
Let's-
already had it right.
Let's not be inflexible about this. It's just
Yeah.
because Sean didn't see Parker in time.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do the motion. So motion to waive first reading?
Yeah.
Okay, second on the motion? All right, seeing no second on the motion to waive first reading, the motion is defeated. Okay. Moving to old business, seeing no old business, moving to public comment, any member of the public wishing to speak at this time?
Thank you. So just pertinent to the discussion of the separation of powers bill, I'm simply wondering, sort of regardless of the concerns of financial ties or qualifications of potential proxies, in the interest of the separation of powers, is there any reason to allow members of one branch to serve as a proxy in another?
To my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I can't serve in any proxy position in any other branch. So I don't really.
When I
Are
said.
you asking if there's like reciprocity, it's like they proxy for you, and you proxy for them?
Well, as a point of clarification, I would just say that when I say branch, I mean executive, legislative, and judicial branches under AUSG. So if the bill is supposed to be addressing, is addressing separation of powers, is there any reason to allow anyone from a different branch to participate as a proxy? Because specific to this bill, it says that the only people who can be disqualified as acting as a proxy would be those from the executive branch who receive stipend. My question is whether anyone from another branch should have the right to act as the proxy.
Unless you have sitting senators now who have a position of executive branch, for instance, I'm in case. And I don't think there's a conflict of interest in that regard. So, and it's kind of like what Senator Robbins was saying with his amendment that he was referring to. There are some cases where it's okay, there are other cases where it may not be okay. But in general, I wouldn't go that far and say that in proxy, at this point, regardless if they have a stipend or not, couldn't serve, because you have some senators who don't receive a stipend, but do serve in the Senate. So I would only do it for stipends, my personal.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further public comment? All right, seeing no further public comment, we'll move to the good of the order. Any executives for the good of the order? Bobby?
Yeah, so about the bill, I don't really have many strong opinions about it, and you guys can talk about it next week. And hearing today what the Jeremy has said about it, it seems like there might be more there. But when I got the email on Friday, and surprise bill, no more executives proxying, it did appear to me and others as sort of like you guys expressing a problem with how we're behaving, since like I in particular have been. Max asked me to proxy at the first two meetings, and Curtis asked me to proxy today. So I would just say, in general, if you do have a problem with the executives, if that is your motivation, it's best that in no case do we hear about it for the first time on the Senate floor. That's not conducive to any sort of good interaction, especially when I am pretty sure that you guys wrote this around the same time that you came in office hours. So if it is just about perception or whatever, that's one thing. But if you're also concerned about how the executives were behaving, I would encourage you to come and talk to us as well. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, so thanks for letting me speak today. Sorry if I spoke too fast again. Sorry, the minutes up. But again, if you guys have any questions or need any help, let me know. I know a lot of not only student government history, but just anything in regards to administration and past bills that have been done here. In regards to the bill, I actually kind of like it. I appreciate its effort because although I trust these people in front of me, I think in the past couple of years, I would be a little bit less trusting the executive branch, especially in regards to firings and things like that. So I think it's important to have the separations. Also, I would like to remind you all, something that we used to do in the Senate when I was in it beforehand is if you agree with something, right, you can knock on the table. I think it's important that we don't lose sight of these like little traditions that are important to the Senate and its own culture. So that's what you might be knocking on teams to do as many times as I come here. So what I agree with. Well, let me know. Feel free to reach out. Again, my phone number is on the directory or just Facebook message me, whatever. Because you need help with legislation writing or bills or anything. I'd like to see this body come back to what it used to be, which is really at the powerhouse behind legislative effort. I know you all can do that. I see a lot of effort here. Just keep it up and let me know if you need any help.
Any more executives for the good of the order? All right, seeing no more executives, we'll move to Senate good of the order and Senate good of the order. Jacob.
Well, first, I would just like to say happy Rosh Hashanah to anybody who celebrates. Hope you all enjoy it very much. I know I will. I just wanted to say I'm really happy that the new senators are working hard. And remember, you can always ask us, like the older senators, for any kind of help or anything. I really would love to work with you all. I love the enthusiasm. I love the energy and everything. And I just want to once again make myself available and open because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation or confusion going around about what the Student Involvement Fund is. If you have any questions about its history, what its legitimacy is, like where all that is rooted, where you can point to and say, this is when we did this, like even though I wasn't here and the people who were mostly, I think I should say everybody in this room wasn't here when that happened, I'm able to point and I can say because I've done the budget stuff. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I always want to make myself available. And also, Sean, I just wanted to make sure, I don't know if you'll pull this in a bit of the order, but a kind of dual poll when we're supposed to be holding office hours, or is it just like, just show up and you can hold it whenever? I just wanted to ask.
We're doing the dual poll. So you can
Yeah, I've
also
been yelling
show
at
up.
him. I'll try and make sure that gets out, and I'll have Sean shoot an email blast, but I'll be sure to try and make that tonight, coming soon.
Thank you.
Any more senators for the good of the order? Jerry?
As far as our bill, I just want you to understand, at least from me, that this wasn't against the executives whatsoever, not for like anything personal. So I just, if it did come across that way, I am sorry. I understand it did kind of overlap, and I can see how one would think that. But I just want you to know that it honestly had nothing to do with that. And I personally do look forward to working with all of you on different things. And any way you need help from us, I'm here.
Any more senators for the good of the order? Harlem, sorry. Oh, sorry.
If I'm gonna be staying until after everyone leaves, but if anyone wants to talk to me about anything I said, not just the following week, but anything I said, I'm happy to talk to them.
More senators for the good of the order? Abby?
I just want to say that I also support your bill. I think that it's good to keep a separation of powers and to like not have this conflict of interest of people that are receiving stipends. It's kind of like they're doing a job with a paid job and they have like inherent biases because of that, even if it's not like on purpose. I think it's a good job, like a good thing to keep that separation and, you know, keep conflict of interest at a minimum.
More senators for the good of the order? Parker?
I don't really know if this fits within good order, but just speaking on the bill again, I look forward to the amendment process because I think we definitely should look at issues of like recusal, for example, like as someone who wants kind of like I would never vote for things that directly relate to programming, funding, or things like that, because I understand that is a conflict of interest. But just recognizing that there are like specific instances where there are conflicts of interest, but then also recognizing that like there are members of the Senate who are also in the executive branch and receive stipends, and that no way like impugns their integrity. And just recognizing that yes, there are specific instances where there are conflicts of interest, but I'm just not sure that such a broad approach to it of just blanketly banning it in this way. Number one, I think it's kind of inconsistent with the only applying to proxies but not members of the Senate altogether. And number two, just like making it more of a specific thing where the recusal can be, for example, determined by the speaker, where the speaker would have to is allowed to forced recusal, specifically for proxies. Something like that, I think, would be more, would just be a better approach.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think that your bill is a great idea. I should say that already. It's a great idea. And I'd love to work with you, especially in the amendment process on that. So please reach out and I'll give you information. The second thing has nothing to do with Senate, but I'm spreading the word about this. I found somebody's Garmin smartwatch last night in the amphitheater. It's not mine, and it doesn't have a name. It's just when you go into the settings, it says that it belongs to a female who's 5'3". And it also has their weight, but how can I say that? But if you know somebody who wants their Garmin smartwatch, I don't want it. I want to give it back to them.
Thank you, Jacob. Any more senators for the good of the order? All right, seeing no senators for the good of the order. Yes, so just continue with office hours. We'll be releasing the usual poll later tonight. Be on the lookout for the speaker summary, and then the weekly Senate briefing. And then if you know anyone who's interested in getting involved in Senate, especially freshmen, please feel free to have them reach out to me. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned until next Sunday. Thank you, everyone. Yep.